So take a nice tall seat. Let's start there. I'll stay close to the screen. Have any and all props that you've got available at home, blankets and bolsters, or pillows that sub for bolsters, blocks. And I have a chair here which works well in a number of yin poses that I'll offer today, but it's sort of like an option, not necessarily something you may want to mess with. Getting used to using a chair as a prop can be a project. So if you're up for that project today, let's. And if you're not, you can use your blocks and your bolster. Take a nice tall seat. Cross-legged or kneeling. I'm going to go ahead and mute everyone so there's no extra sound, but like I said, if you need to interrupt me to hear, please do. And in this nice tall seat, I'll have you drop your chin to your chest so your head is falling forward. And before you take any additional movement with your chin to your chest, just rest there. And with your mind's eye, sense the relationship from the tops of the shoulders, the beginning of the back, and the base of the skull. Sense the distance between those places. Sense the relationship from the base of the skull to the tops of the shoulders, and without forcing your chin down, without forcing your brows down, allow for that length of neck to be easy or a little bit longer, or a combination of the two. Take a deep breath. And then roll your head to the left ear to left shoulder, or something like that. And as you arrive at the sideways tipping point, take your chin up away from your collarbones. And just feel what it is the front right neck has to say. For only a moment in time, and then we go right back down. Chin to chest, I invite you to pause in the center. If for no other reason, to sense the relationship from the base of the skull to the tops of the shoulders, let there be length. Take your deep breath and then roll the right ear to the right shoulder for the other side. Once you are tipped sideways, take your chin up off the collarbones as well and feel what the front left neck has to say, if only momentarily, and then come back to the middle and begin to repeat the process in your own time. So there's this moment in the middle where your chin is down and we are aiming to acknowledge the back of the neck, skull to shoulders. And then you roll left and kick the chin out away from the collarbones so as to sense what the scalenes, that's the front neck muscles, among others, have to say. And then back to the middle to acknowledge the back of the neck and off to the other side. So it's head and neck rolls at the rhythm that feels good for you, with additional moments of acknowledgement built in. So that, sure, we're getting a fluid pattern of movement. We are beginning to create space, while at the same time addressing the spine in the center of your neck and addressing or saying hello to the thick, strong muscles at the front of your neck, those that are responsible for holding the head and driving its movement all day. My hope would be that you find the moments of acknowledgement, back of the neck, front of the neck, to be more readily available on each round. So maybe it does become more fluid, and you are saying a gentle hello over and over again in sort of quick succession. Maybe that acknowledgement feels less than available today and you need those extra long moments that we began with, in which case I encourage you to move more slowly. We'll do another 2 to 3 cycles from side to side. If there are any additional movements within the rolling that feel nice, by all means, go there. As you work, allow yourself the permission to drop into a really velvety, smooth kind of breath. Whether that's a light and sort of easygoing breath pattern or a heavy, deep breathing one is entirely up to you. We access smoothness, whether it's light. We access smoothness in the breath if it's heavy or full, maybe is a better word. And if things feel a little jagged, have some patience and allow time for the smoothness to present itself to you. We started by swinging the head to the left. So we'll need to finish by swinging the head to the right. Let that be your last pass, and then come back to the middle for that moment in the center where you acknowledge the length of body from the base of the skull to the shoulders. With your chin to your chest, take your hands to your knees or thighs. And inhale to lift your heart and slide the eyes forward and up to a seated cow, where you tip forward on the sit bones and let your throat be nice and long. Take the first one slow. On the exhale, seated cat, rounding into yourself so that it's now chin to chest and a hunch in the shoulders, a rock onto the glutes. The inhale, as it so often is for rising up. Shoulder blades hug together, a bit of a proud chest with your eyes forward, possibly up. On the exhale, a hollowing, a rounding, a curling, which might mean the hands move forward on your knees. Back and forth between the two. The inhale for seated cow, expressing the front of the body. And then the exhale for seated cat, expressing the back of the body backward in space. 3 rounds more, give or take. Next inhale brings you up to neutral, so it's not quite the cow pose, but some flavor of the extension remains. Sit in neutral and let your chin be level to the floor, neither tucked nor lifted. Let the upper traps of your shoulders relax, even if that means shrugging them to feel the high point and then setting them down. A couple of times would be fine. Reference points are good. And when you have it, sit nice and tall, let the belly offer a little support, and turn your chin all the way in rotation to the right. Like you're aiming to check your blind spot without actually turning the shoulders. Don't force, just spin to the point of resistance and stop. And then come through the center, like sort of a strange mannequin head movement, and look all the way to the left without straining. And go back and forth between the two. See if the swivel can be really soft and really easygoing. Like I said, and sort of odd mannequin-like swivel, or the way like a Barbie doll head would turn with minimal resistance. Notice if the left and the right are different. They often are. Drop into observation for the sake of observation, and then see if as you turn left and right a couple times more, you can soften the tongue and your chewing muscles, so those that hold the jawbone on. They are not necessarily stretching or doing anything here, but they are soft. As you check out the left and the right side of the room. Go one more time to the left. That should be the last one. And then come back to the center. Let your head be floaty. Chin level. Close your eyes. And let's take a minute of meditation here, whatever that means for you today. You could meditate on the smoothness, the size, the quality of your breath. See if you could be with the breath. If the breath is not speaking to you today, you could pick a point of focus, the screen or another object in the room, to sit with, to consider. What would it feel like to have absolutely nothing to take care of, and nothing to do for another 5 breaths? Of course, we no longer have chin to chest in this situation, but could you acknowledge the space between the base of the skull and the tops of the shoulders anyway? And allow for that stretch of body to be long and tall. Final moments, last inhale. Final moments, last exhale. Good. Okay, eyes open. Undo the ankles. I don't know about you, but my right foot is asleep, so undo the sleepy foot. And we're gonna go wide-legged. So you'll see that I'm sitting up on my bolster. I'm gonna turn and give you a profile, but I want wide-legged without forcing the inner thighs to overstretch. If you are snug in the hamstrings, snug in the inner thigh muscles, tight in the hips, sit up on something, blocks or otherwise, so that wide in the feet feels like less of a problem. Yeah? And when you get up there, a couple cats and cows, recognize that the cat is something like this and the cow is something like this. And just do that a couple of times back and forth. You can even let your heels slide on the floor. Next time you're leaning toward the cow shape, sort of tipped forward on your sitting bones. I want you to stay there. Adopt a slight bend in the knees, which means that I go from here to here. And then stretch forward onto your fingertips until you meet a point of resistance. For me, it's right about here where I first start to feel the hamstrings and the inner thighs. For others, it may be much further in, and of course, some of us may not journey very far. Maintain some small bend in the knees, and then go from your point of resistance back to the starting point and in again a few times. In not so many words, lean forward to the point of resistance, pause and feel, and then pull back as though you changed your mind. Right, do that a couple of times. And recognize that each time you lean into it, you may go further, or you may hit the exact same point of resistance each time. It's kind of like you're getting to know the depth before you commit to it, right? You gotta go on a couple of dates with the depth before you commit to it. Over the next 2 or 3, you're gonna find a depth that feels nice to you and maybe begin to integrate some props. So a couple of blocks stacked into a tower can be really nice. And you'll see that I can go to my comfortable depth and set the forehead down there. Small bend in the knees. My favorite way of setting this up for myself is utilizing the chair. Which looks something like this. It could also be a bolster. There's about 30 different ways to support this fold. So find the place that feels productive. Not too much, not too little, just right. Create a situation with the props that supports, literally and metaphorically speaking, the situation that your legs, hamstrings, thighs are calling for. Which might take a couple of tries. If you've ever done yin yoga, you'll know that it sometimes takes a few tries at props to get something sweet. Just like any other territory in life, don't be afraid to change your commitments if that's what your gut says to you. And rest here. I'll give you like 3 minutes worth of time now that we're settled in. You've already been there for a little while. I'll give you 3 more. If you haven't already, allow for the feet to relax. Sometimes we'll say flex in the feet here. That's a very traditional, sort of rigid, Ashtangic way of looking at the posture. Not wrong, but it's pretty stiff in nature to flex the feet. Maybe it would be better for you today to let the feet go flop. Let the feet roll in a little bit. To let the knees be juicy. And see if the deep inner hips, deep inner thighs respond well to that softening in the feet. What's the relationship there? Enjoy smooth, velvety breath. Allow yourself permission to grow the depth, evolve the props if the spirit moves you. There is never an obligation to go deeper, but there is always a possibility. If you are having the sort of practice where you are dropping in easily and things feel nice, I invite you to simmer, to revel even in that ease and that goodness. If you are having one of those practices where it feels less available to revel, I invite you instead to employ a feeling of curiosity about what might be in the way. Let's take 6 breaths more. You don't necessarily have to count, but you can if you like to. Take a slow exit, friends. Your shoulders floating back. Gentle retreat, recognizing that at some point it'll feel relevant to use your hands to help your knees in and eliminate ASAP the hamstring requirements there. Let's go soles together, knees apart, like a quickie bound angle. You can hold on to your arches or your ankles and just give me a few butterfly flutters here. A la, gym class in elementary school, a little of that. And release, you'll clear your space here. We're coming onto our sides to lie down, so get rid of all your stuff, take your seat off any prop, and come to the floor with something that will act as a headrest at the top of the mat. I really like to use my bolster as a headrest, but it could also be a pair of blocks or a rolled up blanket. Come onto your left hip for me, and if that means changing the orientation of your mat so that you can see me, do that first. And then come onto your left hip so that when you lie down, you're right here on your left side. Yeah? All right, so knees are stacked out front like you're sitting in a chair. Take 2 hands matching out in front of yourself. Tuck your chin. It should feel kind of like cat. And then inhale to raise the right arm and roll your head back on your headrest to the point where your arm sort of floats. And it feels like you're headed toward a twist, but we don't stay. Do that a couple of times. It's like a cat with hands clapping. And then an open armed twist with your head resting on the pillow. 2 more of those. This is just an introductory movement, it's not the highlight. Find your breath. Okay, so now that we've had a couple of those, come back for me and take the bottom leg and stick it out straight, right? I'll give you a view. Top leg is bent, bottom leg is behind me, and that means I can now lean forward into my right knee, yeah? It's almost like a half frog when we lie flat on our bellies and take a knee off to the side. So I want this top leg out of the way, and I want you to experiment with bending the remaining leg, the bottom leg, yeah? Here's where your pillow comes in handy. Just give me a couple of knee bends. This is tricky to describe when you're not in the same room with the people that you're teaching, so bear with me. What I want you to feel is that you're almost lying on your belly, almost. Your right leg is on the floor, out of the way in front of you, and your left leg is bending, maybe to the point where you can reach back there and catch that foot, yes? If you can't catch that foot, maybe grab a scarf or a strap or something to loop around your foot. I won't say which side of the foot is proper. I think if we were thinking about like dancer pose, you'd go pinky toe side. But something about this setup always makes me want to grab the arch. So try both sides of the foot and just like stick with what feels nice. Now, here's the deal. Now that you have that foot, you could probably pull your heel closer to your bum and get a little quad stretch. And there's some effort there, I know. So recognize that you can release anytime you want to, and then bring it right back in for another couple of moments of stretch. Is everybody with me? Anybody struggling? Feel free to unmute and we'll talk. Otherwise, you're going to stretch into those quads or the left leg quads a couple of times. And then when you have a holding place that feels somewhat sustainable to you, stay there. Right, catch that foot and hold it. And within whatever stretch you have going on, think about sending your left groin into the floor. You can't see my left groin because my right leg is in the way. But I'll ask you to have faith anyway that with the hold of the foot, I am pressing my left hip flexors into the ground. Not aggressively, but firmly. Knowing that that's probably going to create more sensation for most people. Yeah? All right, take 3 breaths inside this hold and then I'll let you out. 3 deep breaths. Good. And then release. Nicely done. The nice thing about using the headrest and the, the sort of like tipped over setup is that now the right leg can slide back and somehow you've ended up on your belly. You'll need to go to your elbows. I think after all that, a little sphinx is in order. So once your legs have stretched straight, your elbows are on the floor, take a casual sphinx. Palms could be together, or palms could be on the floor. Take a moment. And then exhale to release the elbows out. We're gonna do the other side. So you'll need to roll onto your right side. Set up your headrest. No surprises here. We're doing the same thing on the other side. I'm gonna turn myself around so that I don't have to put my back to the camera. And I'll walk you through the whole setup. Pillow, as though you're going to bed. Stack the legs up out in front of yourself, match the hands, and do a few of those open armed twists. Just sort of preparing your shoulder and your arm for the reality that they have to get back there and grab the foot when it's time. All right, come back to matching hands. Lengthen the bottom leg, the right leg. Let your left knee come onto the floor. When that left knee comes onto the floor, that's the moment where you're going from your side closer to resting on your belly. Not quite all the way, sort of somewhere in between the side and the front. And I have found in my own body and in my clients' bodies that that is the place where we can work with the right leg. Yeah, so a few hands-free extensions and flexions at the knee. Hands-free to start. You may notice differences in this leg straight away, how it likes to work. When it feels like it's time, it will be the left hand that reaches back for the catch. Remember that we might do a little catch and release a few times, so the knee bending action with the addition of your hand. This is my new favorite way to set up yin postures for myself. It's been one of the things I've discovered practicing at home instead of in the studio. As much as I love practicing in the studio, that of course has not been an option. So in practicing at home, I have found that the entry to my yin postures maybe has been felt a little rushed for some of my yoga life, and this pulsation tactic is what has resulted. When you feel like holding the leg and staying with stretch, go for it. Stay there, do that. And remember that the final piece of the puzzle, the optional final piece of the puzzle, is that energetic pressing action in the right hip flexors and groin, which at this time are pointed almost directly at the floor, if not directly at the floor. And that's where they would like to go. All right, now that you have it, take 3 deep breaths, full commitment, 3 deep breaths. Nicely done. Go ahead and release. Take the right leg long, and instead of rolling onto your belly, this time you're rolling onto your back. So headrest needs to go away, give it a push, and roll from your belly to your right side to your back. Scooch as you see fit. And then hug the knees to the chest for a little egg roll, a little fetal roll, side to side. Settle in the center. Possibility of happy baby. If you feel like your feet are available, you could also stay with the fetal roll with knees hugged close to the chest. I just wanted to give you a little hip flexion here. Right after stretching the hip flexors and the quads, we now fold them up toward the underarms. All right, and then come back into the center. You can roll to the side or rock and roll up and down. I do want you to come back up to seated, so do your thing a couple of times. Until you feel ready to come up. And I'm thinking from here, half pigeon. So arrange your bolster and blocks and blanket. I'm going to give you a diagonal here because I have found that teaching perfect profile in half pigeon is tricky. Let's do left knee forward, left shin forward. You have two options here for that back leg. You can take it straight back like so, classic half pigeon, or we can go a little bit softer with right knee off to the side. In both scenarios, you can fold forward. So set up the legs first, stay with me. Set up the legs first, maybe a little proppage, a little blanket roll for the left butt, yeah? And then give me some wide hands. This is why I gave myself the diagonal, so that before you commit, you can dip your right shoulder. Inhale at the top, and then dip the left shoulder. Do this a couple of times, friends, left and right. And then when it's time, inhale to the center. Establish props if necessary. And fold forward into the half pigeon. Recognizing that this has not been a flow class, so the half pigeon that you might get at the end of an hour of flow is not the same half pigeon that you will get right now. If you like the swishy shoulder dip thing, feel free to do that for as long as you'd like. Find velvety smooth breath and allow a little attention and a little curiosity surrounding the reality of the left hip today, in particular the back of the left hip, right? So your rotators, your glutes, the place where your thigh ties into your tush. This territory is of great interest in this pose. These also happen to be the muscles opposite the quads and the hip flexors. So half pigeon after our quad stretch is not an accidental choice. Right? These are the friends opposite the quads, so we give them the same amount of attention that we gave to the front of the leg. We'll spend another 2 to 3 minutes here. Enough time to feel something productive and grounding, not so long that you feel like it's forever. If anything is painful or pinching, you can bail out at any time. Take breaks in all practices. If you are doing well and this feels like a good place to sit, you sit, lean into stillness. Whether or not you're moving within your pigeon, I find that the question more often than not becomes, how can I clench less in my butt? How can I clench less in the groin? Is there any more looseness available in my belly? In this particular instance, I would assert that there is no application for a firm core. Take another 3 breaths. 3 fully committed, rather full, rather smooth breaths. When you're ready to exit, come up to your hands. Either hands and knees or even downward facing dog in between sides. Be really careful in the down dog. The shoulders haven't had a lot of signaling for down dog just yet, so be nice. If you'd like to flow, you could flow plank, knees, chest, chin, cobra. I almost never feel like flowing when I'm doing a practice like this, but I think a lot of people do. And then the other side, right shin forward. Remember that we have the opportunity to go for classic half pigeon here, where you're more on top of the front leg. We could also go for like an asymmetrical pigeon. Prop the seat either way if you need to. Take 2 hands kind of wide. You still get your shoulder dips on this side. Perhaps they are now more expressive, more silly, more sultry. As many of these as you need. It could be continuous, it could be momentary, and when it feels like it's time, the forward fold in the center. Take as much time as you need to make the circumstances just right. Again, remember that the entry to a posture like this should never feel rushed. So if milking the experience of the entry feels like what you want to do today, I would do plenty of milking, which is different than fidgeting. You know, fidgeting just because there is anxiety or busyness in the brain is one thing. The hope there would be to cut through with some focused breath and re-arrive on the mat. I think shifting and arranging the space so that the pose is successful and a positive experience is a little bit different than fidgeting. So allow yourself a little cushion for arriving and then settle into the breath. Let there be a little time for inquiry in the hip, the glutes, the back of the thigh, the low back, question mark. A little inquiry. Your questions could be, how do I release more? Where could there be less work? Is there any more looseness in the belly? Available to me? Is there any clenching in my face that could go away? One of my favorite things about practicing yoga for many years at this point is the opportunity to ask simple, straightforward questions. Such as, could there be less clenching in my jaw? Questions of this nature allow us to practice a single pointed focus, which is really what we're after when we practice, which is really what we're after when we meditate. Can we set intention and attention on a single point, in this case, a question about the jaw? Or a question about the groin, you fill in the blank. We'll take another 3 to 5 breaths here. Sharpening your ability to breathe well and sharpening your ability to answer single pointed questions about this experience. Okay, friends, next inhale, begin the retreat. Work your way up to your hands. Off the right leg, cat and cow or another down dog. Just like the first side you choose. Optional vinyasa, if you feel like shifting forward and lowering through, please do. Small cobra or up dog if you're feeling it, maybe a little locust. Then exhale to release for child's pose, knees wide. big toes together. Momentary child's pose, long enough to know that we're here. Not so long that you feel like you have to stay. And then inhale to come on up, and let's set up your last posture for the day. This posture will be restful so that it could bleed into Shavasana. And maybe this is Shavasana for today. So I'm thinking some sort of bolster situation, a roll blanket, a bolster, blocks, something to lie on. Socks and sweaters and blankets, right? Find a reason to keep yourself warm. We'll take a supported back bend here, so whether that's with a bolster or blocks, up to you. I'll have you sit down on the mat and recline. Mid-back, shoulders, and head are supported. The rest of the body is covered. Arms might snow angel a few times. Here's that pulsing movement that drops you into the pose. So a few big arm circles might be in order here. Most of the time I feel like I can move the arms for a really long time. If you want to keep going, please do. And if at some point you feel ready, you might settle the arms down to the left and the right, palms facing up. I like to turn my head left and right a couple of times, similar to the mannequin swivel that we did at the beginning of class. Something about turning my head all of the way for a moment helps me to relax my chest. So you could try that. Of course, at some point you'll come back to the center and dip into rest. If there is movement that would flesh out the beginning of this experience, keep going, find it, make it good. And take your attention, when you have it, to the soles of your feet. Let the soles of the feet have feeling for a moment. Let your heels and your calves come next. Let your knees and your thighs have feeling for a moment. Feel your glutes and your hips spreading on the floor. Literally and metaphorically allowing for your bum to be wider. And work your way up, a gentle scan through the torso, through the lungs, through the shoulders. The arms, the neck, the head. And work all the way up, encouraging relaxation from bottom to top. find that your sense of active participation in posture tempers back, dials down. And the degree to which you can surrender to your day, your current situation, just this pose, dials up. With each passing breath, you find more and more that there is less and less for you to do.